In this video, we are going to talk about another way to solve a quadratic function. So the first thing I ask is, what does it mean to solve a quadratic? If we think back to what we learned before, it might mean to find where the parabola crosses the x-axis, or to find the values of x that make it true. So these are just two different ways that we might think about what it means to solve a quadratic. But what are some methods that we have so far? We have learned graphing, and we have learned factoring. So for graphing, we would look for, here's our parabola, and then here would be our axes. And then we would say that this point and this point were our solutions, right? The x value there would be our solutions. For factoring, we might say if we had x plus 2 and x minus 3 equals 0, then you could say x plus 2 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0 with that's our zero product property. And then you could say x is negative 2 and x equals 3 would be our two solutions. So those are the two methods we know so far, but factoring doesn't always work. Factoring does not always work. And I'm going to show you an example right here. If I have x squared plus 12x minus 2 equals 0. If we were to set up our x, we would put 12 on the top and negative 2 on the bottom. And then we would ask ourselves, what two numbers multiply to 12? And we might get 1 and 12, negative 1 and negative 12, but those don't add up to negative 2. 2 and 6, or negative 2 and negative 6 also don't work. And 3 and 4 and negative 3 and negative 4 also don't work. So this is what we would say is not factorable. So that doesn't mean that we can't solve it. It just means we need another method. So we need another method. And that's what we're going to talk about here. We can take square roots. So let's think of a very simple quadratic. If I had x squared equals 4, well, I want to know what number squared is equal to 4. And yes, I could do that in my head, or I could use an inverse operation. What's the inverse of squaring? It's square roots. So I could take the square root of this side and the square root of that side. Because just like in any equation, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now these are inverses. It's just like addition and subtraction. When I do the inverse, they negate each other and I'm just left with x. Now what is the square root of 4? What is the square root of 4? We need a number times itself equals 4. Well, we know 2 times 2 equals 4, but there's also negative 2 times negative 2. So in this case, x is positive 2 or x is negative 2. because both of those, when I square them, will in fact give me 4. Now to make that easier for us, instead of having to write out this every time, we could say x equals plus or minus 2. This plus or minus is actually two numbers. It's this number right here and this number as well. But mathematicians make it a little more efficient. So one of the things to remember is when you take the square root of both sides, you must include a plus or minus. Okay? Because when you're taking the square root, there is two answers to this problem. And we could check that by graphing it. If I wanted to graph that, I would subtract 4, and we would get x squared minus 4 equals 0. And then I'm going to replace that 0 with a y. And if I take out my calculator, I'm going to see that the graph looks like this. And it does have two solutions. And I have to indicate those two solutions here. If you only tell me one of the solutions, you're not fully solving your quadratic. In our next video, we're going to do some more examples where we take the square root of both sides to solve a quadratic. We will also have a video where we remind ourselves how to simplify radicals so that we can better solve our quadratics. Thank you very much.